Welcome, everyone, to our Sunday community chat and membership sign up for our Caribbean Canadian community. I hope we're all doing well tonight. So I'm just going to share my screen and get us started. So just a reminder that as you're joining us tonight, we are live and recording, live streaming, and we are expecting everyone who has joined us tonight to be on camera, visible on camera, with as little distractions as possible, and to be fully alert and present in our meeting tonight. So welcome everyone. So we'll just get right into it. We've got everyone signed in. Thank you for arriving on time and early for those who joined us early tonight. We'll go through our introductions, our land acknowledgement. We'll be discussing the Caribbean Canadian identity, as well as identity as our topic discussion. Then we'll be taking our 5-minute break, and then joining back in for our committee updates and membership sign up. And that will wrap up our tonight's session at 9:30. And then we will have an optional after hour session, which is our time to get together, learn more about each other, informal social portion of the meeting. So participants, which we are our members and our guests, who self-identify as Caribbean Canadian and are serious about joining our Caribbean Canadian identity social movement and are serious about joining membership. So we have on our site, which we'll be going through a bit later, www.rchn.ca to apply. There'll be more instructions on that later on how to sign up. Collaboratively engaging in a purpose-driven dialogue to advance our Caribbean Canadian identity social movement. Please familiarize yourselves with our social movement in advance. So if you haven't already done so, if you visit our YouTube at this link, click and copy and view our video that we have on social movement. And as well, participants are required to engage in the discussion and be visible for the entire duration of our meetup tonight, except for break times, of course, which will be announced later, what time we're taking break. And as I said before, our event is being live streamed, recorded, and published on all of our platforms. And if there are any new guests who are interested in seeing and would like to experience our regular fun meetup to see what our discussion looks like, you will have an invitation valid only for next Sunday. So our next meetup coming up in 2 weeks' time, you'll be getting an invitation. So look out for that in your email. We're moving on to our participant intros. So I'll go around and ask your name. Please identify which Caribbean country you are representing tonight, why you joined the movement, and why did you decide to attend tonight's meeting. I'll go in order of who I see on screen. First, I am seeing Oliver. If you'd like to introduce yourself and answer the recording.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good to see all the faces. Seems like we haven't had a meeting in a while. Glad to be here, all the familiar faces. So my name is Oliver Levy, representing Caribbean country called Jamaica, aka Jamdang. And why did I join this movement? Pretty much because growing up in the Caribbean for so many years and coming here I also, see a void here, and I felt like I was a little bit lost. No connectivity here, right? So plus, I wanted to join this movement to leave a legacy for my kids as well, so they can always have some sort of Caribbean culture happening here. So that's why I joined the movement, and that's it.
Thank you, Oliver.
You're welcome.
I will introduce myself as well. I'll go before I call on the next person. I am Danielle. I am a board member with our Caribbean Canadian Parents United group. I'm representing the country of St. Vincent or the funny island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Why I decided to join the movement, similar reasons as Oliver was saying, wanting to feel connected to fellow Caribbean Canadians and fellow Caribbeans in Canada, as well as learn more about my Caribbean heritage and be able to impart that knowledge on my daughter and for our future generations to, develop these traditions and knowledge of our Caribbean countries and all of the culture and things that come with being a Caribbean in Canada. So next I see Beverly. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Beverly, representing St. Lucia. Why did I join the movement? I think it's important for us being Caribbean Canadians that, we do what we can to make sure that we have our spot in society here, because I think we're kind of getting lost in some regards. So just to, I guess, bring everybody back to like the Caribbean part of it. So that was it for me.
Thank you, Beverly.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Ingrid.
Ingrid O?
Oh, yes, Ingrid O. I think you're.
I'm Ingrid Osborne. I'm representing Barbados and Guyana. The reason why I joined this is to enlighten the younger generation about the Caribbean and maybe leave some footprints for them behind to follow in.
Thank you, Ingrid. Next up, we have Alicia. Am I saying your name right? Alicia?
It's okay. It's Alessia.
Alessia.
Yes. So
welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Alessia, and I decided to join the movement because I do believe that a lot of times we only hear about Jamaica, and I'm sorry, yes, I do represent Jamaica, but it's not just about Jamaica. And for me, it's a great way to really learn about the other cultures and communities that make up the Caribbean. And so I just want to learn as much as possible and be able to integrate myself, within a group, within a diverse group that is not just of one country or one culture. So that's the reason why I joined.
Thank you, Alicia. Next up, we have David.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm David Caton, representing Trinidad, Jamaica, St. Vincent. I believe the main reason I joined is kind of redemptive, just for my own heart as a Caribbean person, spending most of my life in Canada. And I've been attending the meetings and the meetups, especially this one, hoping that I could just spread all the information that all the knowledge that I've acquired over the last few months being a member. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next up, we have Mark.
Hello, good evening. I'm Mark, representing Jamaica. I joined the movement for a lot of the reasons that have already been said, but joined to help, grow the community, help to empower our community, work with the kids and teach my kids and others as well more about the culture, and also to learn about other cultures. And this group is lots of fun. So just wanted to be a part of this organization.
Thank you. Lisa?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa, and I'm representing Barbados. I joined this movement to be around like-minded individuals, to learn more about other Caribbean countries, and to pass along the knowledge and education to my kids and to future generations.
Thank you, Lisa. Camille?
Hello, I'm Camille, representing Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a part of this movement for a number of reasons. One, I'm on a journey to reach my full potential. I'm on a journey to self-actualize. And part of that means I have to get to know who I am. So this movement and being around like-minded people allows me to get a better understanding of who I am. And also because I joined this movement because I feel a responsibility and accountability to my children and to my community to give back in a positive, meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Rixella next.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Rixella Griffith. I represent Guyana. And I joined the movement because for more than a part of it was curiosity, and also to be an integral part in a movement that I can share ideas, that I can learn about other cultures, and I can share what I know. And as other people said, to just learn the habits, learn what other cultures do, what's the food, what's the culture, and the diversity. So I joined the movement so I can actually share and be a part of a movement that I can learn and be able to share with family members as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Rixella. I see Nicole Hines next.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Nicole Hines. I am representing Jamaica. I basically have decided to attend this meeting, so I'm not a member yet, but I'm born and raised Toronto from Jamaican parents, but they've always exposed me to the culture from very young, and I have been able to bring it into my adulthood, where I cook Jamaican fusion cuisine. So I really was interested about this group because I love hearing about all the other countries, and I'd love to do more collaborations with different countries in the Caribbean. So that's why I'm here. I just want to stay connected with my peoples, and also to pass on any information that I can to my children and community.
Thank you, Nicole. I think I didn't miss anything. I think I got everyone. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your lovely intro. Next up, we have our land acknowledgement being presented by David. David, if you'd like to go ahead with the first land acknowledgement.
Thank you. I'm just going to read for the Greater Toronto Area. I know the land acknowledgement is very important, as many of us just said, we are indigenous to the Caribbean, but the peoples who are indigenous here are quite recognized these days. and it's been all over the news. But like my workplace and many places in Southern Ontario have taken up the fashion of doing this sad acknowledgement. And I think it's the right thing to do when you're talking about heredity and where people come from. So where we are, it says, the City of Toronto acknowledges that we are on traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit and Métis people. The city also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. The City of Toronto has acknowledged the traditional territory since March 2014. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so on the tail end of that, we have our Caribbean Canadian identity. Do you have a volunteer to read this, our definition tonight? Who would like to read this?
I'll read it.
Oh, thanks, Dad.
Okay, Caribbean Canadian identity. People who are native to or descending from Caribbean nations, regions, territories, including their variations by ancestry, ethnicity, and currently reside in Canada and self-identify as Caribbean Canadian. We represent, serve, and belong in the Caribbean Canadian community. Be deliberate in supporting this sole shared identity in our space. We do not promote racism or colonialism, so unscientific labels such as Black, brown, and white are not tolerated. Further, hate, political, and religious debates are not tolerated.
Thank you very much, Dad.
Okay.
So next up, we have our poll question for the evening. Did you know? Recognizing that race is a social construct, the Commission describes people as racialized persons or racialized groups instead of the more outdated and inaccurate terms racial minority, visible minority, person of color, or non-white. This is from the Ontario Human Rights Commission. If there's anybody who has any thoughts that you'd like to share, any, one word info that you'd like to add to this, or just to say yay or nay? Agree? And feel free to unmute your mic. Okay.
I think the last time when we were talking about this, somebody asked who's the commission. What that was referring to is the Ontario Human Rights Commission. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I think that changing the language is very important. So I think that's part of the reason why we have this slide up, and we just wanted to highlight the fact that some of these terms are becoming outdated. We need to start to recognize and acknowledge and speak, change our language so that others can also change theirs. So just wanted to share that. I don't know if anybody has any questions or wants to make a little bit of a discussion out of that, but just wanted to share that.
Thanks, Mark. I'm going to launch our poll. Go ahead here. Can everyone see the poll?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Ooh, good. We have 100% for number one. Do you agree to use the inclusive term Caribbean Canadian throughout this event? Yes. Do you self-identify as Caribbean Canadian? Yes. Are you a current or potential member of one of the organizations hosting this event? Yes. That's awesome. Great. Thank you for participating. We'll move right along. So in the Caribbean, I'm not sure if everybody knows, or if you know, if you don't know, you can raise your hand. There are 43 nations in the Caribbean. I'll just say this, Nicaragua, specifically speaking, I was not, before all of this, I was not aware that Nicaragua was a Caribbean, or was considered a part of the Caribbean. So this is also one of the reasons why we get together and learn more about our islands, because then we learn what is all about the Caribbean, and we learn of all the different islands and different places that we share culture with, and all the differences that make up the Caribbean culture. It's a beautiful thing. I love this. Is there any island here or country here on the list that anyone was surprised to see? You can raise your hand or unmute your mic.
This is Nicole. I was shocked with Honduras. I don't know why I didn't think Honduras was Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. Same. That was another one for me too.
And Mexico is
Okay.
interesting to me because isn't Mexico like North America?
No,
No.
Mexico is part of Central America, which borders the Caribbean Sea.
Oh, it borders
that-
the Caribbean. That's right. That's right. Okay.
Funny that you say that because I believe it is a part of North America as well. So
Yeah, isn't it though? Because I thought I was losing it. Because I'm like,
yeah. So it's a funny one, but parts of Mexico border the Caribbean Sea, so it is considered a part of the Caribbean.
okay, you learn something new every day.
Yes, absolutely. So in the Caribbean, there are many different dialects and languages spoken, including African and cultures, African, Asian, European, Indigenous, South American, and South Asian, as well as the different languages, Creole, Dutch, we've got English, French, Papiamento, and Spanish, some of the languages that are spoken across the Caribbean, and not only English. So the state of our community and our purpose, the Caribbean Canadian community is suffering an identity crisis. Now, normally we would go through and just see if anyone agrees or disagrees with that statement. We are going to be touching on this a little more in depth as we go through tonight's presentation. So if you feel free to just say whether or not you agree or disagree, and we'll have the actual discussion on this later. But if you agree or disagree, if you just like to say yes or no at this point in time, just so we know where we stand as we go into the rest of the discussion. I would agree that we are suffering an identity. I would say so.
I agree as well.
Me too.
Thanks, Nicole. Thank you. Anyone else like to share their agree or disagree?
I agree.
Thank you, Andreas.
I agree.
Thanks, Oliver. Okay, so we'll move right along. How we are tackling this and in our movement, as Camille Kerr has lovely put, we are tackling it by forging a collective perspective, direction, and working unity. So again, the purpose of even this social event tonight is to bring into that unity and collectiveness so that we can continue to break barriers and move forward as a strong Caribbean Canadian community. So our vision is to build a thriving Caribbean Canadian community as we are here, accomplished, and united. So if you're not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we've tweaked it a bit, and we have applied the mission and vision of Caribbean Canadian community on this. If Mark, if you'd like to elaborate some more on our pyramid here.
Sure. So just wanted to share with everyone that I'm partnering with Danielle this month to go through this exercise and walk through and welcome all the potential members, new members, and just regular members to the group. So just wanted to introduce that we do this once a month. We walk through and we introduce our beliefs, our thoughts, and we like to share that with others to see if you have potential to join our organization and join our movement. So we're walking through. We wanted just to share some of the things that have created our foundation in our organizations and then the different organizations that we have. So basically, we're looking at mirroring some of the beliefs and thoughts that we have to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And how this came about, it came about 2 years ago. I believe Camille was having a workshop, and we had a workshop with our members, and we had a long conversation around, I think the question was more to, is the Caribbean Canadian community a thriving community? And I think the consensus of the group was that it wasn't. And then we started to kind of dig into why, right? So it was a very interesting conversation, and we came up with a number of things that the members and the team at the time felt that we needed to become a thriving community. So that's what you're seeing at the bottom of the screen here. A lot of the foundational elements to progress forward. We needed to have a Caribbean Canadian identity. And that's what Danielle's going to talk a little bit more about today. The growth mindset and what are some of the solutions to having that growth mindset. We talked about knowledge, having knowledge, inclusion, friendship, sense of belonging, free will, freedom. I know I'm reading through these, but I'll read through them really quickly. Communication, forgiveness, reconciliation, healing, presence, participation, engagement, independence, self-reliance, autonomy, reinvent, redefine, and renovate, and accountability and responsibility. Those were the foundational elements that we had come up with that would help to propel us up to that next level and help to build out that, in comparison to Maslow, the self-actualization. So we were looking for those qualities and to build on those qualities within our organization to help to improve the quality of life for Caribbean Canadian, the community. And then that would help us to reach our mission, which is to connect and enable Caribbean Canadians. And so I just wanted to share that. And that's where, we compare this to the hierarchy of needs. We need to start to work toward, or continue to work toward, fulfilling these thoughts and beliefs that we have to help us to move up to that next level. So that's a real brief overview of what this slide represents. Any questions, any thoughts on that? Okay, no, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So, as Mark has lovely put, our hierarchy of needs, so as it pertains to our social movement.
Right. You can, I think, yeah, you can forward.
Going backwards, starting.
That's okay.
Okay, so our discussion tonight is on what is identity. So when it comes to our Caribbean Canadian community, identity is something that, as we were speaking about earlier, is under a crisis. And so when we are learning about what it means to be Caribbean Canadian, it's important to even look at the definition of identity. So identity here, as defined by Oxford Dictionary, is the fact of being who or what a person or thing is, a close similarity or affinity. So as we saw those 43 islands listed, or those 43 countries listed as part of the Caribbean, while there's such a vast variety and differences amongst these countries, there's also a similarity that we share as being Caribbean. And then, of course, being on Canadian soil, similarities of living here in Canada. As well, Webster's Dictionary describes identity as the distinguishing character or personality of an individual. That comes down to our personal identity and how we identify, as we identify as Caribbean Canadians, self-identifying as such as part of this organization and the social movement. So I'm going to share a quick clip on dual identity. Being Caribbean Canadian, sometimes we find ourselves caught between two cultures. What it means to be Canadian, what it means to be Caribbean. Nicole made a good point when you spoke about your parents introducing you to Caribbean culture, being born in Canada, but being of Jamaican descent, as many of us can also relate. That is an important part of self-identifying, where we can, feel that connection between both cultures, using them together and building our
Daniel,
identity. Yes, Oliver.
Sorry, if you
Your
don't
hand
mind
up?
if I interrupt a little bit before you play. I just wanted to just interrupt before you play that.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone that's just coming in. Thank you for joining us. I just want to reiterate, I guess you didn't get that memo when we first started about turning on cameras. So it'd be great to turn on your cameras. It's, to build trust in our community. Also, we just want to see your faces. You can see our faces. We want to see your faces, build trust. And so it's very important you turn on your camera, because we want to, yes, I see you, Candy. Thank you. All the way from the car, you turned on your camera. Thank you.
I am
appreciate
sorry
it.
I'm late. Hello,
That's
everyone.
okay. That's okay, as long as you're here. So if you don't mind, Miguel, if you don't mind, we want to see you, buddy. Turn on your camera so we can, and if you are, send me a quick message, because I'm monitoring. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. If not, you'll be removed if you're not on your camera. I got your message, Rexella. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel. Sorry for that.
Oh, no, sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just get right into it. Starting at the 3-minute mark of this video, just a little background on her story. She'll be giving just some info in terms of, or her story to inspire us in terms of the dual identity and what it means to be kind of stuck, not stuck, but in between two cultures, and how that turns into a benefit rather than a stumbling block, an obstacle. So I'll just share.
Experience as an untouchable, a term referring to the lowest level of the Indian caste system. They would ask me stereotypical questions like, does your dad work at a gas station? or what are those red dots you guys wear on your forehead? Yeah. That was my first glimpse of racism, a concept that I had never experienced before. So I went home and I cried and I cried and I cried, fearing going to school the next day due to how much bullying I was facing. I just wanted to be liked. I just wanted to be popular. And I just wanted to fit in. So I began to change myself. I started straightening my naturally curly hair in hopes to fit in with the girls around me. I began using lightening creams at age 11 to lighten my complexion. I stopped speaking my language, stopped watching Tamil movies, and even stopped bringing my beloved South Indian food to school for lunch. Fast forward 2.5 years, my family was once again given the opportunity to relocate, but this time to Cincinnati, where I attended a suburban high school. Fearing of facing the same ridicule and bullying I faced in Singapore, I continued to conform and assimilate to the dominant culture. In fact, my cultural detachment got so bad to the point where I began to impose it upon my family. I remember telling my mother that I wouldn't go out with her if she was wearing Indian clothing, and even asked her to remove of her religious pieces, scared of what our community might say. As I got older, I began to feel lost. It was almost in a way where I looked in the mirror and couldn't recognize who I was. I had lost what had made me unique. So when applying to college, I made it a point to apply to a university where I felt that diversity was being acknowledged and recognized. So I applied to UC. And I came here and I loved it. In hopes to reconnect with my culture through my love of dance, I joined UC Dharak last year, an international dance team fusing Indian dance styles with other genres. And on that team of 20 members, only 5 of us were of South Asian descent, leaving the rest of the 15 to be from other ethnic backgrounds. It was through this experience where I was able to see that the culture that I was once ashamed of and made fun of for was now something that people actually wanted to be a part of and learn about. You see, oftentimes, first-generation immigrants are torn between 2 cultures. We feel the responsibility to pay homage to our roots, but at the same time, claim the culture that we've been born and raised into. This is what creates a space of gray area, forcing us to feel like we must only choose one, eventually leading to a loss of cultural fluency. You see, while trying to conform and assimilate to the dominant culture, I only lost my Indian side. By proudly displaying who you are and where you come from, you are not only pushing to your truest self, but you're also giving the people around you the exposure they need to become culturally fluent as well. By being culturally fluent, you are gaining strength and perspective from other cultures, as well as creating a pathway that leads to more meaningful conversations. In a country where 38% of the population are people of color, it's important that we acknowledge the diversity we interact with on an everyday basis. We must take what we can from each culture that we interact with to grow as a community. We must model behavior that reflects acceptance, respect, and love of other ethnic backgrounds in order to pass on to the next generation. Many of us find it hard to fuse our bicultural identity. However, I was able to use my journey of cultural fluency to create a multimedia platform called the S Movement with my best friend, Sri Brahmandam. The S Movement is our artistic expression of showing our love and appreciation for our bicultural identity. Through this platform, we aim to fuse South Asian culture with Western culture through creative photo shoots, think pieces, playlists, and the opportunity for other artists to showcase their work. It is so important as a community that we remember that cultural fluency is a strength, not a weakness, because at the end of the day, we all belong to one, the human race. Thank you.
I see the finger snaps. Some agreements with that video. Yeah, definitely a lot of that definitely hit home for me as well. Part of our discussion tonight definitely surrounds that in terms of the blending of the two cultures and just knowing that keeping a strength in one culture also strengthens the other. So another did you know that cultural identity is an important contributor to people's well-being. Identifying with a particular culture gives people feelings of belonging and security. It also provides people with access to social networks such as this, which provide support and shared values and aspirations. And these can help break down the barriers and build a sense of trust between people, a phenomenon sometimes referred to as social capital. There's more information on our website, www.rchm.ca. Does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share as we open up the discussion in terms of what it means to have our dual identity and being Caribbean Canadian? Any thoughts you'd like to share from that video? Yes, Candy?
I don't know if it's too loud, if you guys can hear me okay. Is it all right?
Yep.
Okay, I was actually just having this discussion yesterday with a couple of friends about being Indo-Caribbean Canadian and coming here and not experiencing race. I was in grade 2 or 3 when a kid in my class pointed out that I was wearing a Paki dot in my class photo. Sorry, my baby photo. My teacher had an assignment where she wanted us to bring in a baby photo of ourselves. She was going to make a collage of before and after, like then and now. And all my baby photos had the little black tika that they put on babies. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought I looked cute. I was in grade 2. I didn't know any better. So I brought in the cutest photo I can find. And this little boy screamed at the top of his lungs, "She's wearing a Paki dot!" And I was mortified. I was like, it sounded wrong. Like it sounded like he was accusing me of something. So I knew it was like not right, but I didn't know what Paki meant. So I went home crying. And I told my dad what happened, and he's like, "Who said that?" You know, I'm like, "Oh, I remember. He called me a Paki. What's a Paki?" He's like, "You tell him you're Trini. You're from Trinidad. It's not in India. It's nowhere near India. You're an islander." And I was like, "Okay." So I went to school, and I'm all like, "Oh, I'm Trinidadian. Like you're wrong. Like And I told him to learn his geography. I remember saying that to him, and then he still looked at me, and he's like, "You're still wearing a Paki dot, though." And I was like, okay, I have nothing to say to that. And I cried again because I didn't know what to say. And it literally took me years after, like I stopped wearing Indian outfits. My parents would be in town listening to their Indian songs in the car, and I'd like turn down the volume when I saw my friends in town. Like it literally took years later for, I don't know if you guys know the band No Doubt, Gwen Stefani. It literally took her coming out and making the bindi a cool thing to wear. And then all of a sudden my girlfriends were like, "Oh my God, that's so cool. Like, you're like Gwen Stefani." And I'm like, she's like me. That's my culture. Like, she's appropriating my culture. And they were just like, "She's so cool. Oh my God, you're so cool." And then I was like, "I'm cool." It was horrific. But I lost a lot of valuable time loving my culture. And a lot of, like, I'm now rewatching old movies from those days that my parents used to watch it that I wouldn't watch because I was in protest. Like, I don't want to be Indian anymore. So it was that story was insanely accurate to my experience. That was crazy. I like that video.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I wonder how much of that still happens. And I'm not naive to say that it doesn't occur like in rural parts of Ontario. But if you look at, a lot of the, the cities, and you look at Brampton, Mississauga, and, some parts of Toronto as well, where I think the minorities are probably the majority now, right, in schools. And just, I'm curious to know how much of that, you look at a school, I'm just using Brampton as an example because it's next door to us here. But, you go to a school like that and just, the norm now is to bring your food from your culture for lunch, and people are dressing the way that, that they're where their parents or where they came from, right? And again, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, because I live in Caledon, and actually even in Caledon right now and in Orangeville, drive around, you go to the groceries, we are seeing our people there, right? Which 10 years ago, you wouldn't see that. But now, you know, the cultures are it's very evident that there are other cultures other than, you know, what we traditionally see or expect to see in Canada are here, right? So just a thought.
Yeah, you know, Daniel, watching that video kind of remind me of, it's pretty much the opposite from what we're talking about here too, where I've known people from the Caribbean living in Canada here, and they tried to hide their Caribbean culture because they want to fit in. And, you know, I was puzzled for years. And up until, you know, I start learning of identity and understanding why people do certain things, you know, I get it. But, you know, it's really tough to even think about when I really think about it, right? So, you know, that's another thing too, because, you know, we may not hide it, but but some of us that I know, trying to so hard to fit in. You know, I love kids. For those who know me, I just love kids. So, and sometimes I'll go up to, you know, somebody will invite me at their house and I'll play with their kids. And for me, I'll speak Jamaican. And, you know, they were like, no, they don't understand that. Or no, they don't talk to them in that language. I'm like, what? Right? So it's just interesting from another perspective when it comes to the identity or dual identity or losing our identity for that matter.
So
Yeah,
I'd like to.
Oh,
go
yes,
ahead.
please. Go ahead. Nicole. Nope, go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to share that. So for me, I was born and raised in Toronto and spent most of my life at Keele and Lawrence, in between Keele and Lawrence, Keele and Eglinton area. So I was within kind of walking distance from Eglinton Avenue West, right? And so basically, you know, when I say that, like, being raised by Jamaican parents, I was really exposed to the culture, but it was so much so, you know, being in Toronto and it's so heavy presence of Jamaican that I felt really proud being from that culture. And I also lived in a community that had a lot of European ethnicities, like Italian and Portuguese, and then you have Colombians, etc. And they were very, like, we were all first generation kids, and everybody was just really proud of coming from their ethnicity. So that's one thing for me. Like, I was able to not be, and of course, like, sadly, you know, when it comes to the Caribbean, like, at least back then, like, everybody just talked about Jamaica, right? And so being from that island and a descendant of it, like, it was never not cool, you know what I mean? And so that wasn't something that I ever was, like, embarrassed about. Then I spent 13 years living in Calgary, Alberta. And when I moved out there, and this is more in my adulthood, so I've raised my children out in Alberta, but living out there, what I found, which was interesting, is that the Caribbean, because there's less of the community out there, the Caribbean communities all actually came together. So there wasn't so much of a division, because I felt like growing up, like, I didn't even really know a lot of Trinidadians until I was, like, in high school, which is kind of ridiculous when you kind of think about it. Like, it's really strange. But when you move out west, like, I'm living in Vancouver now, and the further west you go, the more that Black people just come together regardless. And so if we are Caribbean, like, that is our connection, right? So we no longer divide ourselves based on, oh, Jamaicans only Jamaicans, you know, Trinis only Trinis, and so on and so forth. But we literally come together because there's just less of us. And just like the African community will a lot of times do as well, right? Like, you'll sort of see that happen too, the further west that you go. So yeah, that's just my experience. I'm kind of lucky that I wasn't made fun of or anything like that. Like, my food wasn't made fun of, like, you know what I mean? Like, Little Jamaica has been around for a very long time. I mean, Caravana, the presence of Caravana has been around for like attracting millions from like what, the 80s, if not before that. Like that's a long time. So yeah, I was very, very grateful. And then I ended up turning it into a career, and then, started to run catering businesses where Jamaican cuisine was the inspiration.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Nicole. Because there is that side of it where there is the pride of being Caribbean. Did anyone else want to share any thoughts or experiences? Floor is open.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I would like to go. For me, I don't know, maybe I'm probably just really simple. I do know that, and I have experienced racism. So it's not even a matter of racism, but I was born and I grew up in Jamaica before I migrated here, right? But I never really thought about dual citizenship. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm Canadian, but even though my passport says I am Canadian, I'm Jamaican, right? So I never really gave thought to having that dual identity, because as far as I'm concerned, this is me. It's who I am. It doesn't matter whether I go out, I could be into, doing presentations or whatever in a room full of people. There are some things that are going to come out that are just Jamaican, but then I'll translate. If I'm saying something, I'll translate, but I never really gave much thought to it. I never really thought that there was a difference with who I am. I am Jamaican, naturalized, born Jamaican, Caribbean, even although I haven't traveled the Caribbean yet. But I never really gave it much thought to say, oh, my Canadian identity is different from my Jamaican identity. So for me, I've never had that, experience. And it kind of goes back to what I had said before, a lot of times where you go, Jamaica, and yes, I do understand Jamaica is huge on the world map. And it's one of the reasons because, the music and the culture and all of that. But it's just, when it comes to like the food and all these things, when you go out and it's like, everybody know oxtail, everybody know jerk chicken. So I think sometimes, even as a Jamaican, we might do a disservice to other Caribbean cultures because we take it for granted, right? That is the reality. We take it for granted because wherever you go, people hear me speak and they're like, oh, you have a Jamaican accent. I'm like, okay. And then, oh, they start talking about jerk chicken and oxtail and, all these things. And it's just like so natural that I don't even think about it. So that's just my, 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, Danielle, I think there's also some distinction as to when you immigrated to Canada or migrated, whatever the proper term is. Because as a child, children always would just want to fit in, right? So if they're a minority in a group coming into school and everyone is, looking at them and pointing at them and saying something and they don't feel like they fit in, I think that's where it really shines. As you're a little bit older and you get into the, I would say, high school and up, and it might even be a little bit earlier than that now. I think, you know who you are a lot more than as you are as a 6 or 7 or 8 year old. So at that point, it makes it a lot more challenging for the younger kids to be able to stand up and say, no, this is my culture, this is who I am. You know, they don't fully understand that yet, so they're still developing. So I just kind of wanted to call that out as well, but it doesn't diminish anybody else's experience, right? So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I also wanted to add to those points as well in terms of Jamaica being so popular. As a Vincentian, and growing up in Canada, well, I was born in Canada, but growing up here, always hearing, it was always a matter of, oh, are you Jamaican? And my father would ended up telling me that when Vincentians came here, a lot of like our accent and a lot of things that we say and the way we say things are very similar to Jamaican culture. And so instead of saying they were from St. Vincent, they would just say, yeah, I'm from Jamaica. Like if someone say, oh, where you from? Just say Jamaica. Or, are you Jamaican? Yeah. And then me now, as a kid growing up in school, there weren't any other Vincentian kids. None. I didn't know any Vincentian kids other than family. So it never really came up, really. It was just, I'm from the Caribbean. My family's from the Caribbean. If anybody asked if my dad had an accent, yeah. To me, my father had an accent, but everybody thought it was Jamaican, and he didn't really tell them none the wiser any different, right? So, but still very proud Vincentian-born person. So now, fast forward to my adult years, there was a point in time when I started meeting more and more Vincentians that I was super excited. Like, oh my gosh, you're from St. Vincent, what's your last name? I have to find out if we're related. This was always the thing. And so now, being a part of our CC community, Caribbean Canadian community, I'm learning more and even more proud to say proudly that I am Vincentian, that I'm learning more about what it means to be a Vincentian person and imparting that information on and knowledge onto my daughter so that she is a proud Vincentian as well, knowing this is where her roots come from as well. And that while we may have some similarities to Jamaican culture, we are not Jamaican, but proudly representing the entire Caribbean, knowing that there is beauty in all of the cultures. She's actually, as well, she represents Jamaica because her father is Jamaican. So I was also introduced to the Jamaican culture on a more personal level as I got older, not just because of, my friends in school who were Jamaican. And so a lot of things kind of permeated my life as a Caribbean person, as a Vincentian, learning more so proudly of what it means to be a Vincentian, but also embracing what it means to be a Caribbean person, all of our cultures, all of what that means. So, proud Jamaican, a proud Vincentian, proud Trinidadian, proud Nicaraguan, however it unfolds, that we can embrace that and unify in that. I really like how you brought that up, Nicole, that, when we see each other, especially in spaces where there's not many of us, we as Caribbean people can come together. It's a beautiful thing. I see, David, you have your hand up.
Yes, before David goes, sorry, David, I just want to make a quick announcement again. I see someone just came in the room. Horace, if you can please turn on your video, it will be greatly appreciated. One of the requirements here is to have your videos on. If you can at this time, just open up your mic. There you go. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
Yes,
That's okay.
sir. I appreciate it. This is my first time.
Yes, thank you for being here. Thank you.
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, David. Yeah, sorry.
I hope I don't take up too much time. I know everybody is almost saying the same thing, but it's not even racism for me, but I guess it's very distinct racism, but it's a different time period as Mark was alluding to. I just wanted to touch on the Canadian culture because I personally believe there's a lot of culture in this place that is seems to be dry of culture. Some people think it's dry of culture, but as you just as everyone just testified to, their culture is here and they grew up in it and had the pleasure of finally representing it. if not always representing it. So there's lots of culture here, as some of you said. I mean, I also grew up in downtown Toronto, but I spent time in London, England. And I sometimes identify myself as an ice hockey player. So that's a very long story how that happens, but it's still true. And I think if you look at the history of even ice hockey, you'll probably notice that the way it was invented and the way it was, for loss of better words, colonialized and marketed, it's the same like everything else, probably in North America. You know, billions of dollars made it very, very fashionable and, you know, beautiful, but it probably started off with the indigenous peoples. In saying that, in my schoolyard, there was many minorities that came over in a plane or in a boat, and all over Europe and all over the world, you know, and including the Caribbean, many countries. And I could remember people identifying different Caribbean countries back then. And now I can still hear people not know the difference between them. So it goes, I think, just on where you are. And I think we're going to find ignorance everywhere, even in this day and age. People are just in a different seclusion and not communicated with the rest of their environment. And so they don't know the differences. And I'll use myself as an example, just knowing and finding out about 43 countries in the Caribbean. Like, I was born in the Caribbean, but I didn't know that. So am I ignorant, or am I just learning, right? I'm in a learning process. So yeah, I just wanted to clear up the part about the racism and the ignorance and the learning, and even what we're proud of. What we're proud of when we identify and when we kind of like don't identify, or when we're trying to fit in, especially for the children. Because I tried to fit in. I tried to play my hockey as good as anybody. You know, I could remember the Canada-Russia series, first one. They put us all in the gym, you know, as grade school kids to watch that. And my heart was pumping for Canada as much as anybody else. So, you know, I wasn't born here, but so what does that mean? And then you find out that all through Nova Scotia, you know, African Canadians played, you know, for the last 200 years, ice hockey. So it's not something that is meant for one race in particular. And so that shows you what the kids are fighting for. They end up fighting for the truth. There's a series that I think we all should watch, just like that video was very good. I'm glad you guys decided to show it. It's called Lady Parts. And these are 4 Muslim ladies in London in a rock and roll band. And I guess it's set in today's society, but it really talks to how we try to fit in, and yet how we keep what we're emotionally proud of the success of our countries, right? And that's what we're trying to say, whether it's in your heart or whether you're just showing it, you know, externally. Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Hey, Danielle, do you mind if I just take a second to welcome our guests?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So hello. So just, I see a few new faces. Just wanted to take a minute out to welcome you to our meeting and to our community chat and membership sign up. My name is Mark. I'm a member, a director of the Caribbean Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And I'm co-hosting with Danielle, who's also another director for another organization within our group here. And we have once a month, we have these meetings where we like to welcome guests to come in. We open our doors so you can see what we're doing. I know you've probably seen through social media some advertisements come out for some of the things that we're doing. So we just want to open our doors to you so you can get an idea of what our organization is about, see if the values and the things that we are doing are of interest to you and you want to join our movement. Part of what I would like to just kind of quickly do, I think, Nicole, you were already on from the beginning, but Lorraine and Horace, you're both, I think you guys joined a little bit after we did our intro. So just wanted to quickly get an intro from both of you. Just, it's really quick, just who you are, what country you represent, and what interested you in joining the call today?
Oh, hi. So, yes, do you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah. So I'm Horace Tomlinson, and I represent Jamaica, and I now live in Canada for over the past 10 years. And I'm also the producer and director of Authentic Business Entertainment food show on YouTube, which I do YouTube and so forth. So, for example, I talk about food, and I also do interviews. So, for example, persons they send me their food from all over the world. So I talk about their food, the presentation, and I give my comments and all of that. I show their photos, I show their location, which country they come from, what city in that country, their name, everything to have that connection. As I said, my production is Authentic Business Entertainment. So I like my viewers, and my production is always authentic, right? So yeah, so that's it, and to join this community is to, I love the Caribbean. I love the Caribbean. I was born in the Caribbean. I'm here in Canada, but yet still my heart, is always in the Caribbean somewhere. I want to visit every Caribbean country. So part of my production is to go ahead and to seek guests to be on my show from the Caribbean. I like to highlight persons from the Caribbean. So that's one of the reasons why I'm in this community, to show, to see if I could go further, to have persons. I know Caribbean people can cook, right? So I like to get in touch with as many persons from the Caribbean, every Caribbean country. As I already have many persons on my show from the Caribbean as well, and Africa, Asia, Middle East, you name it, all foods, all over. But I like my Caribbean people to involve more in the show. So I'm looking forward for that. So that's the reason for me to be here in the program and in the community.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Lorraine, do you mind taking a second, just introducing yourself and what interested you in joining us? You can hear us. Can you hear me, Lorraine? Yeah, okay. You're on mute, so I just wanted to let you know.
If you don't mind to introduce yourself, Lorraine.
I think she's working on it. She was trying to get off mute just now.
Yeah.
Okay, if we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, we could circle back. I just wanted to welcome you guys to the group, but thank you for joining. And sorry, Danielle, I don't want to steal your thunder there.
Yeah, no, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that. We do want everyone to feel welcome. As we talk about feeling welcome, an important part of identity, it supports our well-being, as we said, provides stability and support, belonging, and as well, an overall sense and feeling of unity. So another lovely quote, we discussed it earlier. I had asked everyone just to say whether or not you agree or disagree. As Camille Kerr has put, the Caribbean Canadian community is suffering an identity crisis. All of us had agreed earlier. So I'm just going to touch on it. I know we do have, thank you, Horace and Lorraine, for joining us. I'm just going to go into discussion in terms of what an identity crisis is. An identity crisis, a period of uncertainty and confusion in which a person's sense of identity becomes insecure, typically due to a change in their expected aim or role in society. So as we were sharing earlier, I think we all could agree now, definitely, as we were sharing earlier in terms of how we identify as our roles in society, that when we struggle with identifying as Caribbean and Canadian, feeling like we may have to choose one or the other, that definitely, can stir up some feelings of insecurity and cause an internal crisis. Alicia, you've raised your hand. You have a comment?
Actually, a question.
Okay.
And is for Camille and probably Mark and Oliver, the stalwarts. What happened, or what was the catalyst for you to identify that there was an identity crisis with Caribbean Canadians?
Great question.
I'm going to jump in real quick, and then I'll let the other team members answer as well. When I look at the Caribbean Canadian community, you look at the news, for example, right? And Alicia, you talked a little bit about being Jamaican, and I've had similar experiences to you. When people say, "Oh, your family's Jamaican," the food, the this, the that, they love it. I've been there, they treated me so well. But then on the flip side to that, it's, you turn on the TV and, it's not as bad as it used to be. But when a crime was committed, there was a Jamaican. It was somebody with a Jamaican accent, specific complexion, and, and it always ended up being, we were targeted, regardless whether it was right or wrong, right? We are targeted on the news. So I look at the crisis from my perspective is taking away that negative stigma to not just Jamaicans, but people of color from the Caribbean, because when our names are called, it's not necessarily in a positive light, right? Unless it's something entertaining, where it's music or some sort of, I don't know, some sort of entertainment that's out there. That's what they love us for, or sport, right? But other than that, don't want nothing to do with you, right? So that's the part of the crisis for me, that I think we need to change that whole persona of people in the Caribbean.
Yeah, also to there's a census came out not too long ago, and if you look on the census, there's probably at least 15 or 16 different box you can take off. Nothing says Caribbean, not one, and not all of us. And if you look on the 43 different countries and territories and regions, not everybody goes by. When I look on all the things that you take off, not everybody fit in any one of those categories. So, on top of what Mark said, that as well, and I'm pretty sure Camila has something else, even to add to that.
Yes, that I do. And that's totally in line with what Mark and Oliver are saying. That's a really good question, Alessia. And for anybody else who's interested, we have a lot of videos on YouTube where we really go into dissecting how we came to be. But long story short, Alessia, and for everybody else, basically, when you're looking at identity, you're looking at four main factors. You're looking at how is the community doing economically? How is the community doing socially? How is the community doing culturally? And how is the community doing politically? So from an analytical perspective, we're falling short on those main four areas, generally speaking, right? Of course, there are the ones who are doing really well in those four areas in our community, but I'm talking generally speaking, on those four fronts, we're not prominent, right? So that's where we recognize. From there now, we also took surveys, community surveys for the last, when we first started 6 years ago, every time we had an event, we would have a survey circulating, just Caribbean, people of Caribbean descent fill it out. And certain questions we asked them there, do you feel a sense of belonging? Majority said no. Do you feel a strong connection to your community? Majority said no, right? So those are all the indicators that there's some uncertainty, right? There's some confusion as far as who we are as a people. That's to sum it up.
Thank you, Camille. Well put, team, well put. So on the tail end of that, an identity crisis involves questioning the sense of self, and it creates an uncertainty of one's place in the community. So as we saw in the video earlier, where the young lady was speaking on having that uncertainty in herself, in her place, as Camille just said as well. Majority of the answers that came back in the surveys said there was not a sense of belonging and not a sense of feeling a part of a community. Definitely, that's what comes along with an identity crisis. And so that's what we're trying to do now, is bridge that gap and address that crisis. So I'm not sure if everyone is aware of what happened earlier in June or mid-June of this year, when Michael B. Jordan came out with an endorsement for a rum naming it Juve. And as we as Caribbean people know, the history behind Juve and the term Juve, when it comes to our Caribbean culture, also with not just playing mass, but the reasons why this was a part of why this is a part of our community and our Caribbean culture. The issue that took place with him using this name was that the trademark identified the name Juve as not having any cultural meaning or no meaning in terms of language, which is not true. Juve definitely has roots in the Caribbean culture when it comes to the French Caribbean culture especially. And so all of this uproar that ended up coming out with this was that he ended up changing the name of the rum brand. My personal opinion, I'm kind of disappointed because rum is traditionally Caribbean. So it made sense to have a rum named Juve. You know, it does give a warm and fuzzy when it comes to identifying as a Caribbean person. And I don't know what the name has been changed to. If anybody does know, I don't know if what the name has been changed to for the rum brand, but it begged the question, why is identifying as a Caribbean Canadian important in addressing the identity crisis in our community? And how is the identity crisis affecting our Caribbean community? I think we kind of answered question number 2 a bit earlier, but of course the floor is open for the discussion. If anybody would like to answer these questions or have anything they'd like to share, you can unmute.
Hi.
Hi, David.
Hi, I was gonna kind of jump in on that earlier. I just didn't want to talk too long. But I think it's so important to know what you're proud of. And the kids are, you know, it's not like pride, but proud. So there's a difference being proud or having pride. I think there's a big difference, especially when you're doing it in yourself, maybe even long before you join a movement like this. You have the sense to join a movement like this. So how do you want to identify and then join, a movement like Caribbean Canadian Community, right? So it's not that you got it from DNA necessarily, because race ends up being a four-letter word these days. You can't say race without racist, because there's no such thing as race. So what are we proud of? And I heard a lot of people talk about the food. I'm proud of the food too. I know how to cook it. I'm proud of it. I like it. I still buy it even though I can cook it. The language, I can probably speak 7 dialects in the Caribbean. Just jump from island to island and just, lap up the patois, right? So that's only 2 things, right? There's so many other things. And I think one of the main things I always fall back on that just makes me very emotional is our modern, I call it modern history and how we got here. And yes, we are in a crisis, but we got here by strength, by peace, by manners, by bravery. And the bravery, when I say bravery, I mean just traveling, the ambition to compete with the world from a little dot. We come from a little dot and we're competing, and we want to get better. That's why we're here tonight, right? So that's what I'm proud of. And what was the question again, so I can finish talking?
Why is identifying as a Caribbean Canadian important in addressing the crisis? And
Yes.
how it's affecting the community? I think you kind of answered it though.
Thanks. I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there for your imagination. Maybe someone else can talk about the literal sense of it, because it's very true that we have, and the kids, of course, right? The kids need to hear what they're proud of, like, did you want England to win or Italy to win today, right? And why do you want England to win? And is it because you have roots in London, or, your grandfather's Italian, or is it because of the spaghetti? No, it's not the fish and chips, right? It's a little bit deeper than that. And yes, the Caribbean helped to win World War II. I'm sure many people fought and did the right thing, but it's not just that either. So we are a people with history, with independence, and we did a lot of things with peaceful means, regardless of what the 6 o'clock news says. And this is a forum to prove that. Thanks.
Yes.
Well said. Thank you, David.
I want to add to what David just said, but I'm like him. I'm holding back all of my comments because I don't want to hog up the time. I'd actually prefer to hear from some of our newer members and our guests. But I'll just keep it short, just to tack on to what David was saying. When you say you're Caribbean Canadian, it doesn't just mean you love roti. You're not telling people, I'm Caribbean Canadian because I love roti. There's so much more behind what it means to be Caribbean Canadian. So I think from Danielle, your previous slide where you said identity crisis has to do with uncertainty and confusion. The opposite to that would be certainty and clarity, right? So I would argue two main things that stand out to me, that in addition to all the surveys and all the other analytics we've been taking all this time, but all of us here on this call are a part of the said community. So we know because we're in it. It's not like it's an outside group doing research on us. We're in this community. So this stuff resonates with us. It makes sense. But two things that stand out to me that is a clear indicator that we are uncertain. and confused is one, there's a lack of storytelling, passing down stories in our community. Like Rixella said, she has a lot to share, right? And we don't get those stories as often, whereas other communities, for example, the First Nations communities, the Southeast Asian communities, the ones who've been there, done that, they share their stories with the younger generations. That's the stuff you can't find in books. You can't find, that stuff is gold. And that is one clear indication that we are not clear and we're confused. The second indication is that we're using negative labels. As opposed to saying Caribbean Canadian, we're using words like Black, brown, and white to self-identify. When you're using those terms, which are racist terms, those terms came from colonialists who were racist, and those terms are political terms. They're not cultural terms. Those terms were meant to keep those in power staying in power and those oppressed to stay oppressed. So the fact that people of Caribbean descent are using terms like that to self-identify is clear indication that we're confused and uncertain. So when you're saying, so to answer your question, number one here, or no, why isn't, no, number two, how is it that, oh no, hold on 1 second. Using the term Caribbean Canadian, I don't know if the question is here. Yes, number one, sorry. Using this term, it references who we are as a people, using Caribbean Canadian to self-identify, or Jamaican Canadian, or Vincentian Canadian, or Trinidadian Canadian. There's nothing wrong with ethnicity. We're talking about political terms like Black, brown, and white, which has nothing to do with anything. But when you're using Caribbean Canadian or something along those lines, you're referencing your values, right? Your ancestors, the values that have been passed down to you from your Caribbean ancestors, and even the ancestors before that, Africa, India, China, etc. You're also referencing a geographical location on the planet. When you use Black and brown, there's no country named Blacktopia or Browntopia. You're not referencing a place on the planet. You cannot identify where you came from when you're using that type of language, nor can the person that you're speaking to. They can't identify where you're from when you're using that language. The other thing you're referencing is your traditions. You are communicating freedom as opposed to oppression when you use Caribbean Canadian. When you use Black or brown, you are communicating oppression, not freedom, right? Autonomy, using Caribbean Canadian also suggests autonomy, that we govern ourselves, we direct our narrative. It also fosters progress when you're using a term like Caribbean Canadian, as opposed to old, outdated terms like minority, Black, brown, person of color. All of those terms are outdated terms and they don't help us progress as a community. That's my answer to your number one, Danielle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say something really quick? I know, like, again, I keep focusing on our new members, or potential members and guests. Some of these conversations are heavy. The topics are heavy. We do have, we want to get a message across, but I just want to highlight, I'm going to talk about that message a little bit more in a second, but I do want to highlight that our meetings are not just about this. So I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, the way we are talking about these conversations we're having now. We actually go until 9:30, and after 9:30 is the after hours, and pretty much anything goes in the after hours. I see Alessia smiling there a little bit, but we talk about whatever. We talk about food. So Horace, if you love food, we talk about food. We talk about whatever anybody is on people's minds. Sometimes it's a heavy topic. Sometimes it's an adult topic about men and women or whatever. It could be whatever. It's just, that's after hours. But during the regular Sunday meetups, we usually have an agenda. We go through certain things. It could be, we're highlighting, food from a specific country or all of the Caribbean. We could be talking about ancestral stuff that, just whatever the topic of the night is, that's what we talk about. But we are not like a pro, don't get it the wrong way. Like, this is not a BLM movement or anything like that. We are just pro-Caribbean. And part of the pro-Caribbean piece is we want to see the different shades of the Caribbean. We don't want to focus this on just an African Caribbean group, because that's not what we are, right? We want to have the Indo-Caribbeans as a part of this group. We want to have the Asian Caribbeans, the Latino side as well. We don't have a lot of that yet. We do have one member who's of Latin descent, but we just want to build the group and build the Caribbean so that we are one, right? And we all have a lot of things in common across the different islands. So we want to highlight that and share that. So just wanted to share that with the group that, you know, some of you, it's the first time hearing these combos, and we're not a militant group, right? So that don't take it that way, and that's not what this is. The topic of this week, or this community chat and member sign up, was about identity and an identity crisis. And that's why we're talking about what we're talking about right now. So just sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Because just as the Caribbean is diverse, our meetings are also diverse, and we definitely discuss a variety of issues and topics and fun stuff and all of that together. But yes, tonight is our focus on identity. I have something I wanted to share quickly, but I want to leave the floor open for our new members. Nicole, you had something you want to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of tackle the first question. It kind of, I feel like I've said something similar in the beginning, but for me, it's important to identify as Caribbean Canadian because it helps me to pass on information onto my children, right? Who are now second generation Canadian, right? And so, and not living in Ontario where the influx of the Caribbean community is so large. So I like using the title because that, number one, helps. Of course, passing on to kids because we don't have, you're right, like we don't have the stories that, or access to the stories that, let's say, I would have had with my parents, right? Like that, I don't have those types of stories. Like the memory is not there for me to pass that on to my kids. So one thing I'm trying to do is, like, at least when I was a kid, like I would watch a lot of Jamaican comedy and stuff like that, and like Caribbean comedy, just to kind of, I wish that we had more access to our to that type of entertainment, because I find like some of that can help with passing on information, passing on sort of the lingo, the way Caribbean people are and stuff like that. I find that music, that's one thing that I've really been able to bring into the household to kind of show that there are so many different types of music in the Caribbean. It isn't just dancehall and it isn't just reggae. So, I mean, that's kind of the other thing that I've been able to pass on, because I just feel like if I don't do that as a first generation Canadian, then it just gets washed away. And I've noticed, like, you know, when I moved out to the western part of the country, one of the things that I always tried to do, I haven't done it in Vancouver yet, but in Calgary, I did it, is always like join a Jamaican Canadian association, or, you know what I mean, join a Caribbean association, because like I mentioned, out in the West, the islands tend to come together a little bit more. And so I was able to do that and be able to pass on stuff to my kids. But just identifying, just using the term Caribbean Canadian, I think that alone helps to kind of pass it on, because it really, for me, it's like, how do I pass on outside of food, outside of just music, right? Like how do I pass that on? Like it's wonderful. I love, you know, turning on Netflix and seeing all the Nollywood and all of that, and it is phenomenal. But man, do I wish there was a Caribbean movie every now and then. You know what I mean? Like there's like, I saw the, you know, Michelle Montana one, and that is about it. Like I wish that there was just a little bit more.
You can create one.
I know. That is the truth. That is the truth. But I'm definitely, as like a teen and early adult, I always tried to find out, you know, like watching Oliver, for instance, and watching his whole comedy series and watching Miss Lou and all that kind of stuff. Like I got into it, trust me. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm able to pass it on to my kids.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to share quickly before we move on? No, we're good. Okay. All right. So all of that being said, reclaiming and reinventing the Caribbean Canadian identity. Join our social movement, join this social movement so that we can accomplish this, so that we can, continue to make our stamp on the map and pass this on to our, future generations and continue to keep this going strong. So I know we've used the term social movement quite a bit during this meetup, so I'll just give a little background on it. Our social movement is reclaiming and rebuilding our Caribbean Canadian cultural identity, changing the divisive colonial language, using color to identify groups of people, as Camille had also said. And how do we get there? We stop using these decisive terms. We teach our kids about the Caribbean Canadian culture, joining the Sunday meetup, so coming out and learning something new and fresh every other week with us on a Sunday, and becoming a member. Joining the organization is definitely, strength in numbers, definitely going to bring more unity and strength to the social movement. I will just say this, teaching your kids about Caribbean Canadian culture. Fun fact, Nicole, you mentioned, watching the Caribbean shows. The Kink in My Hair is on Amazon Prime right now. And I
used to watch it back in the day.
religiously. When it was new, I watched it religiously. And so I had an itch to, watch a Caribbean show and to, show my daughter as well. There are other shows and entertainment that belongs to us in our community. And so the entire series, all the seasons are on Amazon Prime if you're looking for something to, get into and, show the kids, because it's very diverse. While it is, a Jamaican storyline, it's still very diverse in terms of the Caribbean community and Caribbean Canadian community, what it means to be Caribbean Canadian in Canada. So
thank you for that tip. I was watching Amazon Prime today, so thank you very kindly. Now I know what I'll be watching next. I appreciate it.
You are welcome. You are welcome. Okay, so we usually during our meetups we have a 5-minute deep breathing portion, and this helps us just to unwind a bit. We've been here for a good bit in front of our screens, so if you just take 5 minutes with us to kind of